Hey everybody, Bill Sky, the Common Sense Guy today, and today I'm going to do a video that's kind of outside of my normal area of computer technology and programming. I want to talk about this video that I saw on TikTok yesterday, and I kind of wanted to go over what me as a trained science professional, how I look at something like this, and how I think you should too. So again, I watched a video on MSNBC last night where they played a couple of young people, lucky young people, right, that you're young, talking about the price of cars today in 2023 and how we are in a silent depression. I guess that means a depression is going on and no one knows about it. Let me go ahead and play that video so you can actually see what I'm talking about.
That the odds are high that young voters are getting their economic news from social media videos like these.
I heard a new term on TikTok today that made me stop in my tracks.
We are living in the silent depression, and I'm going to explain what I mean.
To buy a new car in 1930 would have been about $860. It's worth about 15 grand. The average cost of a new car today is $48,000.
New cars are unaffordable. New houses are unaffordable. To move to a new place and rent somewhere else is unaffordable.
How could we be living through worst cost of living and wages than 1930? And no politician, no media outlet, no one is talking about it.
Okay, woo, some passion there, and rightly so, because yeah, cars are really expensive today. And let me tell you right again, I am the last person in the world to defend the auto industry. In fact, to bring prices down, I wish everybody, and I mean everybody, would stop buying cars for a week, just a week, to let the car manufacturers know that prices really are too high. I know that'll never happen, but really, are they too high? That's kind of what I want to talk about today. What is the math behind all of this, and how can you learn how to calculate this stuff yourself and not just believe what you see in social media? And again, nothing against the two young adults in these videos. I have a lot of compassion for their blight. It's very expensive to buy a house. We're not going to talk about that at all today. I'm just going to stick with cars. But let's take a look at some facts to check to see if they're really right about the price of cars, and are they really, are they really crazy? So first of all, I want to talk about inflation. First of all, you may or may not know that inflation is a percentage of price increases per year over time. And this is the amount of money that prices go up over a year. So there's a certain percentage. The Federal Reserve Bank would like to keep that at around 2%, 2.5%. But in reality, what are the inflation rates? And what I did was I did some research on this yesterday on the internet, and I found a couple of websites that pretty much corroborated everything. And what I did was I took all of these numbers, and I actually started at 1930. Now, you may or may not know, but in the 1930s we had the Great Depression, so the actual inflation rate was going down. So prices were actually going down in the 1930s, so companies could actually sell their products. But if you take all of these numbers over here on the right, not the monthly ones, but the average ones over here on the right, you add them all up and you divide by 93, which it's been 93 years since 1930, you come up with an average inflation rate of 3.22%, which, you really can't take averages per year, but over a long period of time, like 93 years, yeah, 3.22% per year is actually a pretty reasonable inflation rate per year. So based on this, what should the price of a car be today? And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a financial calculator, and we're going to talk about how I use this calculator to calculate out what these prices should be. Okay, so this is a Hewlett-Packard 12C emulator on my iPhone, and it is one of the most popular financial calculators in the world, and you can actually still buy them, but you can actually get them from on the iOS, on the App Store for Apple. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in what is the inflation rate or the price increase percentage per year, average percentage per year of cars starting in 1930 if you have an $850 car, and is the car really, what should it be today? What should it actually be today? And then I'm going to show you the car that we're talking about. So let's go ahead and put those numbers in. So what I'm going to do is between 1930 and 2023, it's been 93 years. So I'm going to put 93 years in N. Now, in this calculator, N means the number of years. And you can see below that 12x. So if you wanted to do things per month, you could do that as well. But we're going to stick with years. The present value, the PV, that is what I paid for the car. And because that is money going out, I'm going to put $850, and I'm going to put a negative because that's money that left my pocket. And I'm going to put that in present value. That's PV. Now, what is the future value? Now, the young people on the video, they said it was $48,000. So I'm going to say $48,000, and I'm going to put that in future value. So now I want to know, what is the interest rate? What is the rate of increase of price that per year average that we see here? And I'm going to put I. So I click I, and it's 4.43%. That means that this car, or these, the comparison between $850 and $48,000 is 4.43% per year. Now, if you remember my discussion of what was the average interest rate, and because we're talking about averages both in the price of the car as well as the interest rate or the inflation rate, we're talking about apples and apples here, right? So 3.22% compared to 4.43% over 93 years is an awful lot. Let's put in that 850. Let's put that 850 and see what the price of that car would be if it stayed with the normal inflation rate. So I'm going to put 93 years again in N. This time in I'm going to put 3.22%. That's the inflation rate. In the present value, I paid $850, so we make that a negative in this calculator. That's just how it works. In present value, and what is the future value? So that $850 car should really be today $16,197 or $16,200. So those young people actually had it right in the TikTok video that the car really should be only about $16,000 or $17,000 today, not, $48,000. But let's take a little closer look. Let's take a little closer look at what we're talking about here. So what was the most popular car in the 1930s, in the early 1930s? And it just so happens I found one on Wikipedia. Now, I did a lot of research on this, and I think, based on the numbers that I saw, that Wikipedia seems to have the best, most reliable data on it, okay? So what I did was I found the Ford Model A, and we're going to stick with Fords because I'm trying to be as fair and objective as possible. We're going to stay with Ford Motor Company here. And so the Ford Model A, if you notice, there was really two types. There was the $500 version of the Ford Model A, and then there was the $1,200 version of the Ford Model A. Now, if you see down here, in 2022 dollars, it was $20,451, but there's a lot we have to consider here, okay? So if I take 500 and I add 1,200 to it and I divide by 2, I get 850. Now, that was a complete coincidence. I have no idea if that's how these young people or the news organization that came up with these numbers did that, but it's a pretty good coincidence, right? So I think the $850 is a really good number to start off with as the version of the car that we've got. And as you go down here, you can see all the different things about the car, what kind of a class. It was a full-size Ford, but if you look at the total number of people that could ride in the car, it was 2 people that could ride in the car, and if you opened up the rumble seat, you would actually be able to have 4 people. So, and also, if you take a look, and you have to do a little bit of checking in here, the maximum speed of that car was 65 miles an hour. Now let's talk about some more things about this car. The car had 0 computerization, so you couldn't connect your iPhone. I know that's ridiculous, but we need to be objective here. There was 0 computerization, there were 0 safety features, and the comfort was just beginning to become an issue, so they weren't super comfortable. They didn't have box seats, they didn't even have seat belts, so there was an awful lot that they didn't have. And So when you compare a car from back in 1930 with a car today, you have to take that into consideration. Now, if you can find a car today that has no computerization in it, that's top miles per hour, 65 miles per hour, and by the way, you might be able to find a car like that. I think it's going to be impossible to find that in today's market, but it is possible you could find that. I think you're going to be much, much closer to a reasonable value. So you need to compare apples and apples and not apples and oranges. If we compare, I don't know, a Mustang today, which is like $40,000 car, $50,000 car, with a Ford Model A, it's like you're comparing, I don't know, the Titanic with a rowboat. You really, it's not fair to make that comparison. So really, what kind of a car should we be comparing the Ford Model A with? Well, I'm going to go over here, and I noticed here on Ford's website that the lowest price one that they've got, and I know these prices are kind of crazy, but the lowest price one that they've got is this Escape at $29,345. So let's go back and see, let's take away the $48,000 estimate that those young people were talking about. And also, to be fair, also the news media organization. Let's take away that $48,000 and let's do the calculation with $29,345 just to see what we come up with for a more objective, fairer estimation of the inflation rate. Okay, here we are back at our financial calculator. I'm going to clear the memory just so we can start brand new so I don't have a problem. And so I'm going to put 93 years again into N. And then I'm going to put 850 because I've decided to be a little fair here. We're going to use the lowest price for a Ford Model A. So I'm going to put 850 out of pocket. Again, that's why you have the negative in present value. And then we're going to put the 29,345 as the future value, which is the Ford Escape, into the future value. And I'm going to press I, and we get 3.88. Whoa, big change. Now we're down very, very close to the 3.22. We're not quite there. The car is still more expensive than the inflation rate. But is it still really fair? I mean, let's talk about this a little bit. Is it fair to take a car that has zero computerization, zero safety features, and really, really low comfort, which is the Ford Model A 1930, with even the Ford Escape? The Ford Escape, even though it's the lowest priced car, it still has all of that stuff in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recalculate this. I'm going to double the price of the Ford Model A. I'm just going to double it, and that's just to make it more objective. Let's say that car did have some of that stuff. Let's say computers back then were still there, but they would have been less expensive than they are today. Let's say the safety features were part of the Model A. Okay, they still would have been very, very inexpensive back then in 1930, but I think doubling the price of the Ford Model A I think it's pretty fair to do that. Now, there are some better ways of doing that. You could actually look at what does it cost to put safety features into a car today, what are the total costs of that, and then you could then take it back in time and find out what those really cost. Maybe it's not double, but let's start off with double. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the calculator again, and I'm going to put 93 into N. I'm going to put the present value. Instead of $850, I'm going to put $1,700 because that is 850 times 2, and because that is out of pocket, I'm going to put I'm going to make it a negative, put that in present value. I'm going to put 29,345 into future value, and now I'm going to press the interest rate. Whoa, we are now below the inflation rate of 3.22%. So again, there are probably some errors in this calculation. If we change it from doubling 850, that's the cool thing about this calculator. I'm going to go ahead and instead of doubling it, I'm going to take 850 1.5. So I'm not going to double it. I'm just going to increase it by 50% because that's the addition of all those things. I'm going to put that in present value. I'm going to put 93 back in the number of years, and I'm going to put 29,345 in future value. Our interest rate or our inflation rate for this car is now 3.43%. So you can see how you can calculate it. So I think the whole idea of of calculating or comparing a car from 1930 to comparing one today, you really have to take a lot of other things into account. And again, I'm the last person to defend the car manufacturers, but I am a trained science professional. So with that said, what's the problem here? Why do so many young people, and rightly so, I give it to you, right? I agree with you. Things are so expensive. What is the problem here? Well, in my opinion, why do you need to buy a new car? I didn't buy a new car. I actually bought a Dodge Duster, and I think it was a 1979 Dodge Duster. It was a great car. I didn't like it back then. Let's see, Dodge Duster. I think it was a 1975 Dodge Duster. And it didn't look like these two right here, but it did look a lot like this one right here. And it was a maroon, and I thought it was a pretty cool car, but I bought it from my dad for like $1,500, which is probably more than it was worth, but my dad was a crook. Oh my God, did he say that? All right, so, but I look back upon that car now, and I really, really like it. In fact, I have an original picture of it. I didn't get it out for this video. But so why buy a new car? I mean, you don't need to buy a new car. In the first place, if you buy a used car, and if it does need some work, then that would be good practice for you, right? You need to learn how to deal with automobile repairs and things like that. And on top of it, you'll save a lot of money. And you'll actually like the car more because you know more about it, you're dealing with it. Now, of course, you don't want to be taken for granted or for advantage of, so you don't want to buy a really bad used car. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to get somebody who knows what they're doing with buying used cars to buy you a used car. I would never buy a used car from a dealer. I would actually buy one, from somebody I know or somebody that I know knows, things like that. And the other thing, too, is that don't expect to have the best right out of the gate, right? Your very first car, don't expect to have a brand new car. Now, if your parents are rich and they want to buy you a new car, and there's not much anybody can do about that because that's what they've decided to do. But if you're going to be paying for the car, don't just out of the gate, buy a brand new car. I have a young man that my wife and I have known for years. He actually worked for me at my flight school. He went out and bought a brand new, I'm not going to mention the brand, but a brand new fancy race car. I think it was within a year he had sold it because he saw just how much of an idiot it was to buy that car. And yes, I did tell him he shouldn't buy it, but he bought it anyway. Okay, you need to make your mistakes. But he ended up selling it, and now he's got a junker. And I really shouldn't say junker. It's a used car. It works for him. So that's great. The other problem might be your paycheck might be causing the problem. Now, some people say, well, I'm not making as much money as I should. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But let's take a look at the minimum wage in 1930. So in the 1930s, that was the depth of the Depression. The minimum wage was 25 cents an hour. Now, and you can see that right here. And this came from the University of Maryland. So it was 25 cents an hour. It would be really interesting to see what the minimum wage was in 1950. So let's say 1950. So it was 75 cents an hour. So it tripled. But let's go with, because we're doing things with starting at 1930, let's do 1930. And that was 25 cents an hour. So what's the minimum wage today? The minimum wage today is $15.50. So when I do the calculation for that, to find out what the interest increase is over time, the actual inflation rate, or your increase in your paycheck since 1930, is actually 4.54%. So remember, I said that the average interest rate was 3.22% per year since 1930. Now the average pay increase, if you're dealing with just minimum wage, is 4.54% per year. Now, to be fair, minimum wage jumped during the current administration to 15.5, which is really, really great because workers are getting more money. Unions are becoming more active and making sure they're workers. And that's really what you want. You want the workers to be able to make that amount of money. Now, the companies also have to make money too, so you have to think about both ends. So what is the problem? I mean, it looks like that you're making enough money, but I think some of the problems might be that you're wanting too much. You got to have your best new iPhone. You got to have a best. You as a consumer, you need to buy things that you need, not necessarily that you want. And then as time moves on and as you begin to make more money, you'll be able to get those things that you want instead of then just that you need. So I don't know, what does all this mean? Again, I'm the last person to defend the auto industry. I've said that multiple times and I'm going to say it again. But as a science-educated professional, I need to look at things objectively with zero bias, and you do too. So what does that mean? Social media is not the place to get your news. If you watch that TikTok and that's where you got your news, you'd probably be thinking, oh my God, we're in a depression and nobody knows about it. We're really not. And the reason that we're really not is that inflation is a little bit high right now, but compared to other countries like in Europe, inflation is going crazy. I can't remember the name of the country, but they raised interest rates to 40%. Oh my God, interest rates are so much lower than that here in the United States. The unemployment rate is so low. Prices are not really that high compared to other countries, and they are very, very soon going to start going down. In fact, inflation is now down, I think it's down below like 3.5%. So it's actually coming down. So social media is not the place to get your news. You need to get your news from fact-based organizations and not just the opinion of two young people who, by the way, are very, very frustrated. Like I said multiple times, I agree with them 100%. So as a scientist, I and you need to take things we hear on social media and then investigate them like I just did. I took those TikTok videos, I looked into what they were saying. There were some things they were actually saying which was true, but they needed to look closer at the numbers and what they mean. So that means that calculations need to be done, modifications to statements made to make them more equitable, to get to something that is more like the real truth. So you just can't say a Model A that had no safety, no computerization, I'm going to compare that with a Bentley. I don't think that's what they were doing, but I mean, that would be crazy, right? You would never do that. So you have to look at what that actually means. So if you want to be a success, if you want to be successful, doubt opinions and make decisions based on facts. And that's what employers are going to want to see. They're going to want to see that you're just not going to lash out and say, oh my God, I saw these two people on TikTok, so, oh, we're in a financial crisis. No, we're not. You need to take a look at things from a little bit more of an objective position. Now, as for the price of houses, the house that my wife and I own, right, we paid $153,000 for it. It's now worth $600,000. That's crazy. It just seems like it's so much. However, I haven't done the math on it yet, so I'm not going to make any kind of statement as to whether or not the price of our house is too high or if it's reasonable. So those young people out there, I don't know what you think about this. I'm sure I'll get some arguments about it. That's fine. I don't mind to get arguments. That's what I was doing as a teacher for so many years. And this was kind of fun. I enjoyed doing this, and I hope you got something out of it. And I really appreciate your comments. Keep them clean. Keep them reasonable. No insults. I'll just delete them if you do that. But until the next time, take care.